Hi everyone, I'm Jill from Homeschool for Real Life. In this podcast series, we're going to talk about how to keep your kids focused during homeschool time. In this video, I'm going to talk more from the teacher perspective, the teacher side, some things that you can do. And then in the other video, we'll talk more about some things that you can do as supports for your kids to help boost their focus. So some things I want you to keep in mind here are that it's not going to be the same all the time. You can't count on, I've found the strategy that works for my kid. You're probably going to have to try different ones at different times. What works now may stop working and you'll have to try something else. Also, give them some time. They may not work immediately, so give it a little bit of time and see if it kicks in. And try a few of them. If one doesn't work, try another one. So here are 10 strategies you can use to help your children stay focused during homeschool time and maximize the effectiveness of what you are working on. The first one is to make sure that their work is meaningful. We all know if we feel like there's no point in doing something, we're not really going to focus very hard on it or try very hard. And when we're really not attending to something very closely, our retention isn't very good either. And so make sure that the work you're giving them is meaningful. Don't throw in a bunch of busy work just so that they've done more school. Or don't have them finish the entire workbook just so you can say it's done. If there are 10 pages working on something in a workbook and they've got it after 2, you might want to consider skipping some. Right? So, and then help them understand also, if you're studying history, help them understand why this matters. Why is it so interesting? Why do we want to know this? So help it be meaningful for them, and then they're going to be more committed and see the value in it. Second thing is, it can be really helpful for kids if you give them a routine, if they know what to expect. This one's hard for me because I like to kind of just go with my inspiration when we're learning. But I found out, especially for my son, that's really difficult because then it surprises him every time I say we're going to do school. So for him, having at least somewhat of a routine in place can be very helpful. The other thing that you can do is if you want to just list for your day or for your week what you're going to be accomplishing, when you're going to be doing things, it can be helpful so that kids know what to expect and they can be mentally prepared for that. They can be in the right frame of mind. The other thing you might want to consider is breaking your routine. Once you have that routine in place, especially if you're one of those people who tends to be more consistent with a routine, you have 8 to 8:30, we're doing this, 8:30 to 8:50, we're doing this. If you are one of those kinds of people especially, consider breaking your routine. Surprise them. Shake things up a little bit. Maybe go outside and do some observation science outside when they thought they were going to be working in a math workbook. So just look for ways to kind of surprise them and grab their attention that way. And another thing that's kind of along the same lines is to make sure you're incorporating some variety. Don't always approach each subject the same way. Look for different ways to build their understanding in areas so that they don't get bored with one way. Next, incorporate their interests. See if you can find some ways to make what you're doing line up with their interests. This is really easy in reading and writing. And then we can also do it in math. If we're writing some of our own story problems, we can be incorporating interests of our child. And then in science and social studies, to some extent, you have freedom to study what you'd like. You definitely are able to focus in on certain things and spend more time on the areas that interest them more. So make sure you keep your kids' interests in mind when you're doing your planning. Another one is to allow for breaks. There are a couple different ways you can do this. You can make it so that in your routine, your child knows we do these 2 subjects and then I get a 15-minute break or a half-hour break, whatever works for you. The other thing you can do is to incorporate some brain breaks. And these are really short. These only last a couple of minutes, but they change what your brain is doing and they make it ready to do more. So by giving your brain a break in some other way, it helps it be more prepared to keep going. So if you are doing some seat work, some writing work, or reading, or things like that, you may want to do a brain break that's more physical. And some of them even involve things where, you're doing your crossbody type of things, where you're touching your ear over here and your nose here, and it just kind of challenges your brain in different ways. So you can look up brain breaks, and I will post a link of some good ones you might want to try along with this video. So that can be a way to help keep the brain fresh and ready to go. Another thing you might want to think about is consider your methods of teaching. Maybe they're not working very well for your child. Maybe you need to change things up a little bit. If you like workbooks because you can work through it and see that it's complete and it's done, but it's not very good for your child, you might want to look for another method. If they're working online and they're really not very focused looking at a screen, maybe you need to sit down with them. So this can be a challenging one because it's not always easy to just change up the way you're teaching, but it's something to keep in mind. Another thing you may want to do is to evaluate how much you're planning each day. Maybe it's too much. Maybe you need to look at not doing every subject every day. Or maybe if you're doing an hour of math time, maybe that's too much really focused thinking. Maybe you break that down and you do math, focused math for part of that, and then you do a game for the other part. So make sure that you're not trying to pack too much in to your day, and they may just be getting worn out. As I just mentioned, games are a great way to help your child stay focused during homeschool. They change the dynamic of what's going on, they make it fun and more interesting, and help kids stay focused. They're still learning while they're playing the game. We have a lot of games incorporated in our curriculum on h4rl.com, and there are a lot of educational games out there that you can order and some that you can just make yourself. So keep games in mind when you're planning. I know my kids are always happy when we're going to play a game as part of our school day. Another thing to consider when you're planning your lessons is choice. Our kids are usually more ready to cooperate, more invested in what they're doing if they've had a choice. So if you can give them an option of how to work on something or what to work on, that's going to help increase their focus and their commitment to the activity. So it may be that in writing you give them 2 different prompts to choose between. It may be that you let them choose whether they want to write at the kitchen table or out on the deck. It may be that you let them choose between 2 math games for the day. So there are a lot of different choices you can offer that still allow you to get done what you need to get done, but give the child some control and help them be more committed to what you're doing, more ready to do it. The last thing I want to talk about is teaching in the sweet spot. So technically this is called the zone of proximal development. This is something you learn about in teacher education. It's a psychology kind of thing. It basically is saying that there is a sweet spot where we learn best. If you already know what's being taught, you're not really being challenged, it's fine for a while, you don't really mind hearing it again, but your brain doesn't have to be very engaged and it can tend to get a little bit boring. If, on the other hand, what you're hearing is over your head and you're not ready for it, we zone out really quickly because we might try to pay attention, but we realize, you know what, I don't get it, it's frustrating, I'm just going to think about something else. And this happens to our kids when we're teaching. So if you are not working at your child's level, it's going to be hard to keep them focused. They're going to zone out either because they realize it's easy, they don't need to pay attention, or it's too hard, they're not going to get it. So teaching in that sweet spot, which it's hard to hit every time, but it's a really important thing to keep in mind. Just to keep evaluating whether or not you're working at your child's level. Keep an eye out for that. If you see signs that they're bored or challenged too much, right? And then you can provide some extra support, provide a little extension, and make sure that that learning is hitting your target sweet spot where they're going to be engaged and asking questions and wondering something else and figuring out new things. You want them to be feeling like, this is exciting, I'm learning something new, and I'm capable of doing it. So if you need to put extra supports in place to do that, just try to be learning in that sweet spot with them. So those are 10 strategies you as the homeschool teacher can use to help keep your child focused, to increase the amount of focus that you have during that homeschool time. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss anything new. You can also find us on Facebook and visit us at h4rl.com. Check out the other video that goes along with this series, where they're more student-focused ways that we can keep them focused. So thanks for joining me. Try out the ideas. I hope they're helpful for you.